Thank you to the Canadian Digestive Health Foundation for the opportunity to speak with you today about prebiotics, the ultimate fiber. As a dietitian, I have to tell you my disclosures. I am the founder of Prenexus Health, a xylo-oligosaccharide prebiotic company. Totally exciting story. I can share that with you afterwards. But in terms of any information, the company had no input in terms of the discussions, the information I share with you today. Learning objectives. I'd love to share with you what prebiotics are. And dietitians, this is food. So in terms of understanding why prebiotics are important, also recognize the sources, the types of prebiotics. There are differences. They're not all the same. We'll also look at those differences, recognize the health benefits, and the role that they play in health. So also in terms of discussing some of the key clinical trials with respect to prebiotics as well. Now, what is important in terms of the prebiotic is to understand that what we eat nourishes those bacteria within the microbes within our intestine. So as far as that, I always think about that, the t-shirt. And there might be somebody wearing the t-shirt saying, I'm eating for two. Sandra's got that idea, the t-shirt, I'm eating for trillions. And in terms of food, what we should be doing is choosing our food very wisely to nourish those bacteria. Now, what we do know in terms of the carbohydrate, the fiber, is that the diet that is high in these non-digestible carbohydrates does feed the bacteria within the colon. And in that sense, a low-fiber diet, and unfortunately for most Canadians, they are not consuming enough total fiber. So a low-fiber diet can lead to the dysbiosis that you're hearing about. We also see the decreased carbohydrate intake leading to low levels of the good bacteria as well. What's interesting is that we can make a change to the diet, and it's been shown that as early as 4 weeks, we can have an impact even sooner. But the Sonnenberg team from Stanford University has said that what's significant is that there is an intergenerational impact. Mom's diet can have an impact on us, but the impact that mothers can have on their future generations is significant. So why prebiotics and what are they? The definition has been debated, and I think it's important to recognize some significant parts. First, we have the non-digestible oligosaccharides. There's some selectivity in that they're promoting the growth of beneficial bacteria within the intestine. So with that, there are a number of definitions. We've heard about the Microbiota, accessible carbohydrates, but at the same time, if you're looking for a very solid definition, it is that from the International Scientific Association of Probiotics and Prebiotics, another phenomenal website or resource for those who might be interested. Now, prebiotics are fiber. It is important to realize that not all fibers are prebiotics. So in terms of what they do, prebiotics feed the good bacteria. They feed the good guys. Now, the prebiotics are found in food. I do want to emphasize they are found in very low amounts. Now, the wheat is one of our predominant sources of the prebiotics, mainly coming in as a fructooligosaccharide and inulin. Why is it there? It's not there in a huge amount in terms of grams or milligram amounts. It's just that we tend to eat large amounts of these quantities of food. Are all prebiotics the same? I get asked that so often. No, they are not. And what's important is the most common forms of these prebiotics, and that includes fructooligosaccharides, the inulin, GOS-resistant starches. These are all 6-carbon sugars. Think back to your chemistry classes. Think to those 6-carbon sugars, and those are made up from the fructose, the glucose, the galactose. Guess what? Those bacteria that love to feed off of these particular prebiotics are also the ones that cause gas. Now we've got xylo-oligosaccharide, arabinoxylo-oligosaccharide. These are based on a totally different chemical structure change, or a chemical structure, and these are 5-carbon sugars. There's a difference between 6 and 5-carbon sugars. And a lot of the research that we will look at in journals, I want you to be very aware that if something states prebiotics, look for the differentiation between C6, C5s, there's a difference. I get very passionate when it comes to prebiotics, but also at the same time, that was done with the research for the FODMAP diet, was specific to the C6. And with C6 prebiotics, we're recognizing the impact in terms of the bacteria that feeds off of those causing gas, yet at the same time, there are other prebiotics available which would cause that to a lesser extent. Now, the bacteria, they're complex. I thought they were pretty simple, but they're very complex as well. And they do have different carbohydrate transporters, they've got different enzymes. So in terms of what they break down, what they use specifically, it tends to be fairly complicated. So those C6, those would include the feeders from the C6. You see the Clostridia, you see the Staphylococcus, we're seeing Streptococcus, those are the bad guys. Whereas the ZOS, the azos, the xylo-oligosaccharide, arabinoxylo-oligosaccharides are more specific to the beneficial bacteria. There's a difference. So this chart, I think, adds to what has been said by many of the speakers earlier today. Be aware that prebiotics have a significant impact. The initial would be to feed those good bacteria. So you've got the bifidobacteria, the lactobacilli, but at the same time, we can see the impacts of prebiotics leading to fecal bulking. We can see the improvement in terms of those patient complaints with constipation. The impacts of the rise in the elevation in the bifidobacterium lactobacilli can also lead to enhanced immune status. We see reductions in inflammation. But with that increase for the bacteria in the bifido and the lactobacillus levels, those populations, we see the byproducts and those short-chain fatty acids. That's another impact and beneficial impact as well too. And with the short-chain fatty acids, the lactate, the acetate, the butyrate, and so on, there is an effect that leads to impacts of benefits for lipid levels, for blood glucose control, but we also see that reduction in the pH in a specific segment in the intestine. And what's interesting, where those short-chain fatty acids will reduce the pH is specifically where the calcium, magnesium, and potentially even iron are absorbed, and that reduction in pH leads to an enhancement of the absorption of those minerals. That's significant. Now, we also see fewer metabolites in terms of the bacteria, the pathogens, which again can lead to the benefits in reducing colon cancer. Interesting heat map. I love looking at the heat maps. You were told about the antibiotic use, but take a look at this. 2010 down in the United States, each of the states recording the antibiotic prescriptions that were filled on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side, same year, you see the incidence of obesity. It's an interesting correlation between antibiotic prescriptions and the prevalence of obesity. It's profound. Now, heading back, Petchow and colleagues back in 2013 did some highlights at the Probiotic, Prebiotic, and Host conference. And some of the key highlights here is that dysbiosis is linked to obesity and type 2 diabetes. With that, the linkage in terms of inflammation, but also low consumption of the fermentable fibers. That can be restored when prebiotics are consumed. Fecal bacterial presnutzii, which is a beneficial bacteria, does have anti-inflammatory properties. That has been shown to be low in individuals with IBS, Crohn's, obesity, and colorectal cancer. But acetate, propionate, butyrate, all of those short-chain fatty acids, what they do is stimulate the gut hormones, and from that we've seen some phenomenal research on the hypothalamic neuronal activity, appetite regulation, and the impact on glucose regulation as well too. Dysbiosis, digestive disorders, you've heard about this today in terms of Crohn's disease, but also the impact Bifidobacterium, fecal bacterium prausnitzii can have on some of the immunoregulatory factors as well. IBS, Bifidobacterium, we're seeing a few mixed studies there, depending on the amounts that are used of some of the prebiotics, but that probiotics certainly can have a benefit. So the prebiotics are directly connected to the gut microbiota. There's a protection of that thin mucus layer that lines the intestine, and then immune system modulation benefiting as well, and the opportunity to reduce protein fermentation. So those individuals who reduce their carbohydrate intake, what we find is that protein, it gets used as the energy source and it gets fermented down in the colon. And that, rather than seeing the reduction in the pH, we see the pH being closer to normal. And with that, the production of ammonia. We also see the production of phenolics. Ammonia, a concern for those individuals with kidney failure, but also with the phenolics, the impact on inflammation. Braunwell and team proposed some of the health benefits of prebiotic intake. So in this regard, we're looking at reductions in the prevalence and the incidence of infectious agents, the antibiotic-associated diarrhea, reductions in inflammation and those symptoms of IBD. We see the protective effects against colon cancer and also the enhanced availability of some of the minerals that I'd mentioned to you, reducing cardiovascular disease, and the promotion of satiety, weight loss, and even the potential in terms of the impacts on obesity. So clinical trial outcome, Kello and team back in 2014 did a phenomenal meta-analysis of some of the clinical trials. Since then, many, many more have been done, and we're looking at studies that have also added in 16 sRNA, so we're looking at metabolomics as well too. But in terms of the impacts from the clinical trials, they're showing that prebiotic supplementations led to, we've got the improved satiety, we've got the impact on weight management. However, in these studies, we're seeing that prebiotics were required for a duration of at least 10 weeks. The impacts, again, on glucose, insulin, the lipids, but also potential in terms of improving lactose tolerance. Now, with regards to the prebiotics, the one thing is they do feed the beneficial bacteria, but prebiotics can be taken on their own. So you can take a prebiotic, you can take it from some of the food sources as well, you can take that prebiotic together with a probiotic, and certainly within the industry as probiotic companies come forward, they're looking to have the symbiotics where you've got food for that particular bacteria, that probiotic as well. So the sources of prebiotics, I love being asked, so how old should somebody be before they take a prebiotic? Guess what? As soon as they have that human milk oligosaccharide, that's breast milk. That is the first time that little infant is being fed. And in terms of the impacts that mother's milk does have as a prebiotic, mother's milk has a prebiotic. And what that is, as a prebiotic, it does not nourish the baby. It is there to help establish and nourish that baby's microbiome. So the significance of human milk is, it's incredible. But look at prebiotics in terms of our ongoing life, and I'm concerned because we're not continuing to keep that intake up. Now, prebiotics, some of the most common ones being fructooligosaccharides and inulin. You may not see the word prebiotic in food labels, but some of these words will show up as inulin, chicory root, or FOS, fructooligosaccharides. USDA ran a study, and they took a look at the intake of prebiotics within the American diet back in 1999. Guess what? 2 to 3 grams of prebiotics per day. We haven't got a Canadian study available. I wish there was, but 2 to 3 grams of prebiotics a day. Think back to the ancient Chihuahua diet. They were consuming 120 grams of prebiotics. So, food sources of prebiotics. Yes, the food. So we are talking about food, but at the same time, the intake from prebiotics, if we are looking to have anything significant. Now, I told you Chihuahua diet, they had 120 grams of prebiotic a day. What should we aim for? ILSI, the International Life Sciences Institute, suggested between 10 to 20 grams of prebiotics a day. The International Scientific Association of Probiotics and Prebiotics said, well, let's start with 5 grams of prebiotics a day. We don't quite know, but it will differ depending on which type of prebiotic is consumed. When you look at food, yes, some of you are sitting horrified, and I see the cameras clicking. Yes, the numbers are correct. In terms of food, we do have prebiotics, but the amount of prebiotic within our plant material, within the fruits, the vegetables, the grains, the nuts and seeds, is unfortunately very low. So yes, the breads, if you're looking at asparagus, you're eating almost a pound of asparagus. Those bananas cannot be yellow, they have to be green. So when the banana ripens, we see the prebiotics, you see the oligosaccharides being converted over to a sugar. So you've got to eat those green bananas. And in terms of honey being recommended as a prebiotic, you're going to have to eat a lot. Any of my colleagues want to calculate out the number of calories per day. It's significant. So it's quite clear that to meet, now, I should say, it's not to say we go ahead and tell people, don't eat the fruits and vegetables, don't eat the nuts and seeds. We certainly want that. But if we are going to try and achieve a dose that might be 5 grams of a prebiotic a day, if it's going to be closer to the 10 to 20 that are recommended by ILSI, we may need to consider, and yes, we need to consider the supplementation route. So fortifications of foods and beverages are already underway. And it is interesting in terms of the interest from companies looking to formulate as to adding these health benefits, so supplements as well. But the challenge certainly in terms of what is necessary, what are the effective doses. And the pharmacists here in the audience, I want to say a shout out to all of you, you do know that in terms of the effective dose, the higher the dose means it's more difficult to formulate, be it a supplement or a daily dose for an individual. Now, the key differences between the prebiotics, and I've got for you fructooligosaccharides, several fructose chains linked together, galacto-oligosaccharide, which is galactose and glucose bonded. We've got inulin from chicory root, some isomerase maltose as isomalto-oligosaccharide, and xylo-oligosaccharide from 2 sources, either corn cob from China, which gets hydrolyzed enzymatically, or through a high-fiber cane grown in Southern California with a clear water extraction. They all differ. And in terms of the prebiotics, they all need to feed the healthy bacteria. That's a given in the definition. However, some of the prebiotics also feed the unfriendly, the unhealthy bacteria, some to a greater extent than others, be aware. And that is where we're seeing many of the symptoms in terms of symptomology from the prebiotics. DP refers to the degree of polymerization, so those chains of carbons all linked together. And a smaller chain, in terms of the smaller chain carbons, you may see something being utilized higher up, so it's not going to get all the way down to the colon where it needs to be used. However, something that's of a larger molecular degree of polymerization, that molecule will need to be cleaved and shortened, and as it goes through in its long form, it may pass all the way out without being of any benefit. And again, the effective dose, looking for something that's not going to need somebody to take mountains and mountains to give an effective health benefit. So in terms of the highlights for you, digestive microbiota, we know it's key to health. We know that there's an impact on dysbiosis. We want to feed the good bacteria, so we do need prebiotics within the diet. In terms of the different types, keep in mind the dose, the selectivity, the performance are all very different. And in terms of diet, it does matter. Unfortunately, it's not giving us a lot of prebiotic fiber. So the benefits, as I've stated, are many. Now, a quote from Petchow that the products derived from the advances of our understanding of the microbiome are part of an entirely new field that draws together that union of nutrition and medicine, and their applications are likely to be very, very profound in meeting the future challenges of food and nutrition. Any questions?
Clearly a terrific benefit potentially from prebiotics, but when we're looking at many of the disease states we've discussed today, we're talking about a loss of diversity. is this going to work as well in a potentially interventional or therapeutic situation when we may not have as many of the good bacteria because we've actually lost them? Is that benefit actually going to just enhance the potentially damaging or harmful bacteria? Or are we much better thinking of it as how we should be maintaining health in people who have not yet had a problem?
Dr. Hunt, fabulous question. It actually leads to even more thoughts as well, too. 2 points, and I think for all of us, both in terms of the maintenance of health, significant. You see the impacts that were listed for cardiovascular, for blood sugar, for weight. I think that will also hold true for those individuals with varied disease states as well, too. However, I mean, it's important to have each individual patient recognize that in terms of diet, there's only so much that they can do. And this is where today I think what's important is the registered dietitians who are here, we need to really show our strength. And our education in terms of diet and nutrition goes far beyond that of a tear sheet that can be provided within either GP or gastroenterologist's office. The pharmacists can also refer, so anyone who's being given prescriptions, I think it's the strength that we can all, as healthcare professionals, work together to impact the health of our individual patients, the better Canada will be for overall health. Ooh, that's up on an intense pedestal, but I also need your help as well too, because fiber, right now, we don't even have that label that tells us how much prebiotic fiber is within the food. And in part, that's coming. We know that we can get the total fiber, but digestible fiber, the fermentable fiber, the resistant starch are presently not measured. So when you look at the label, you're seeing total fiber, and if something is left out, that being the prebiotic fiber, I am challenging everyone to call forward to the government that our fiber analyses at present are outdated. We need that changed. I think it'll come, but I need your help with that. And it is important as well, too, because as our patients are looking at the labels for prebiotics, the one thing is the only place they can find them is on the ingredient list. So if you're looking at total fiber, you've now got to call the manufacturer to find out how much fiber is actually that of a prebiotic. So I'm calling all of us to work together to improve the health for our patients and for all of Canada. Thank you, Dr. Hunt.
Okay, well, thank you very much.